What happens when a self-made CEO trades his corner office for the steamy kitchens and sandy floors of his own beach resort and finds exhaustion and unfairness hiding under the sun? Franklin Adams leaned against the window of his office, staring out at the downtown skyline. A few customer reviews had caught his attention lately: complaints about slow service, tired-looking staff, and missed reservations at one of his 12 beach resorts. But vague reports weren't enough. Franklin had built this company from scratch, flipping burgers and cleaning bathrooms himself. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes. He decided to go undercover. Franklin shaved his beard, dyed his hair a lighter brown, and put on a pair of cheap sunglasses. He even practiced a slight limp to throw off anyone who might recognize him from corporate newsletters. Most of the resort employees had never seen him in person anyway. Only district managers and a handful of corporate staff had met him over the years. It was a big operation now, easy to blend in. He signed up as a trainee dishwasher under the name Ryan Allen. When he arrived at the Sunwave Beach Resort, he barely got a glance from the manager, Derek. The place was buzzing, families checking in, couples arguing about sunscreen, kids running wild with dripping ice cream cones. Franklin felt a strange excitement in his chest. It had been years since he'd been at ground level. "You Ryan?" Derek barked, glancing at a clipboard. "Yeah," Franklin said, adjusting his cap. "Your dish pit. Don't fall behind. Jackson will show you." Jackson, a wiry guy maybe in his early 20s, gave him a tired nod and led him through the chaotic kitchen. The smell of grilled seafood and chlorine hung heavy in the air. Within minutes, Franklin was elbow-deep in suds, scrubbing plates like his life depended on it. Jackson moved fast, stacking dishes, wiping down counters, and shouting orders over the clatter. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands shook slightly when he grabbed a heavy pot. "Man, you okay?" Franklin asked during a lull. Jackson shrugged. "Yeah, just been a long week." "How many hours you pulling?" Jackson laughed without humor. "This week? 78. Maybe more. Lost count after Thursday." Franklin's stomach twisted. He knew hospitality jobs were tough, but 78 hours? That was inhumane. As the day wore on, Franklin noticed it wasn't just Jackson. Everyone looked wrecked. Servers stumbled through their shifts, lifeguards leaned against their posts with drooping eyelids, and the front desk girl, Wendy Graham, was practically asleep standing up. Late that afternoon, Franklin overheard a conversation near the staff lockers. "I asked Derek if I could get next Tuesday off for my kids' recital," Wendy said to another server, a red-haired woman named Tara. "He told me if I want time off, I should find another job." Tara shook her head. "You're lucky he didn't cut your hours for asking." Franklin clenched his fists. What the hell was going on here? During a water break, he caught Wendy by the snack bar. "You really asked for one day and he said that?" Franklin asked, keeping his tone light. She gave a tired smile. "Yeah, it's how it is. You either suck it up or you're out. We're always short-staffed, so they act like they own you." "Why so short-staffed?" Wendy shrugged. "People quit. Fast. Can't blame them. Derek won't hire more. Says overtime is cheaper than training new people." Franklin's heart sank. He had trusted his managers to run things right. Instead, they were running people into the ground. That evening, after a 10-hour shift, Franklin sat on the beach with Jackson and Wendy, eating soggy sandwiches. "You guys deserve better," Franklin said quietly. "Yeah. Well," Jackson said, chuckling bitterly, "unless the owner himself shows up, nothing's changing." Franklin stared out at the sunset, the weight of it all heavy on his shoulders. Little did they know the owner was already here. And he wasn't leaving until he fixed this mess. The next morning, Franklin arrived early, slipping through the staff entrance before the first wave of guests hit the breakfast buffet. The kitchen was already humming, but not in a good way. Greasy floors, a broken cooler leaking onto the tile, and a frantic line cook named Luis trying to plate eggs with one hand while flipping pancakes with the other. Franklin grabbed a mop from the janitor's closet and tackled the cooler leak without being asked. Luis caught his eye once he finished plating the order. "New guy, right? Thanks, man." "Been trying to get Derek to fix that since last week," Luis said, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. "No maintenance crew?" Franklin asked, wringing out the mop. Luis shook his head. "They cut night maintenance. Said it wasn't cost-effective. Now it's just us during the day if something breaks." That explained the broken cooler and the burnt-out light bulbs Franklin had noticed in the staff hallway. Cost savings at the expense of safety. He stored that away for later. By mid-morning, the kitchen was drowning. Orders piled up faster than the cooks could fill them. Wendy, pulled from front desk duty to help bus tables, looked ready to collapse. Franklin noticed Tara sprinting between tables, her sneakers squeaking on the tile, arms full of half-eaten plates. Near the buffet, a middle-aged man in cargo shorts started raising his voice. "Where's my omelet?" "Been waiting half an hour," he barked, waving his plate in the air. Derek appeared out of nowhere, grinning tightly. "Sir, I assure you, we're doing our best." "Please be patient," he said, practically dragging the man away from the buffet toward the lobby. As soon as they were out of earshot, Derek turned on the staff. "Pick it up. If you can't handle the pressure, I'll find people who can," he shouted, his voice cutting through the kitchen. Franklin watched as the cook stiffened, heads down, moving faster. No apology. No offer of help. Just threats. Later, while hauling a crate of oranges upstairs, Franklin found himself working alongside an older housekeeper named Marta. Her back was bent, and she winced every few steps. "You okay carrying that?" he asked. "Have to be," Marta said, her accent thick but clear. "If I ask for help, Derek says I'm too slow to keep." Franklin frowned. "No carts." Marta shook her head. "One broke last month. No new ones." The physical toll was obvious. Franklin offered to carry her crate too, but she waved him off gently. Pride still intact, even if the body was failing under the weight of bad leadership. Around noon, Derek called an impromptu meeting in the back lot behind the kitchens. Staff gathered in a loose, exhausted circle. "Listen up," Derek barked, arms crossed. "Corporate's sending some regional inspectors next week. I expect spotless operations. If anyone screws this up, don't expect to keep your job. No encouragement. No offer of training or support. Just more fear." As they dispersed, Franklin caught up to Jackson. "Do they ever give you any extra help when inspections come around?" he asked. Jackson snorted. "Nope. Just more threats. Last year, 2 people quit the day before inspection. Derek just pulled double shifts himself and blamed the rest of us for low morale." Franklin clenched his jaw. Fear-based management, neglect of safety, disrespect of workers, it was worse than he had imagined. That night, Franklin stayed late, helping clean up after a wedding reception on the beach. Sand coated everything, and the guests had left behind a battlefield of tipped chairs and half-eaten cake. As he stacked chairs, he overheard Derek and another manager, a woman named Lacey, talking near the tiki bar. "That new kid's not bad," Lacey said, lighting a cigarette. "Yeah, maybe he'll last longer than the others," Derek replied. "Or maybe not. Doesn't matter. They're all replaceable." Franklin gripped the chair tighter. Replaceable. That was how Derek viewed the very people keeping this place standing. The next morning, Franklin volunteered to help at the front desk. Wendy looked relieved to have another set of hands. As they worked, a family tried to check in early. Their toddler clung to his mother's leg, sobbing. "I'm sorry," Wendy said, voice kind but strained. "Check-in is at 3. Rooms aren't ready yet." The father, sunburned and angry, slammed his palm on the counter. "You expect us to wait for 3 hours with a screaming kid? Unbelievable. Get your manager." Franklin watched as Wendy flinched but buzzed Derek without hesitation. Derek swaggered up, taking one look at the family and plastering on a fake smile. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, sir. Let me see what I can do." He turned his back to the guests and hissed at Wendy. "Find them a damn room. Now, I don't care if you have to kick someone out." Franklin stepped forward before Wendy could respond. "I can go prep some rooms. Maybe speed things up," he offered. Derek gave him a sharp look. "Stay out of it, rookie." Wendy hurried to the back office, clearly rattled. Later, Franklin found her hiding near the employee lockers, wiping her eyes. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "I'm trying, but it's never enough. They treat us like garbage in front of guests, and we just have to take it." Franklin leaned against the wall, anger burning low in his gut. "No one should be treated like that," he said. Wendy gave a small, miserable laugh. "They'll just find someone else if we leave." The cycle was clear. Abuse, burnout, turnover, repeat. After his shift, Franklin sat in the deserted staff lounge, staring at the peeling paint on the walls. He had seen enough. Tomorrow he would end the charade. Not with speeches, not with warnings, with action, real action. Because no one, not Jackson, not Wendy, not Marta, deserved to be treated like they were disposable. And Franklin Adams was done watching from the sidelines. Franklin arrived at the resort before dawn, the sky still a deep navy blue above the coastline. He wore his usual Ryan uniform, but today, his mind wasn't on dishes or hauling boxes. Today, he was pulling the plug. He found Derek in the manager's office, hunched over a computer screen, scrolling through spreadsheets. It was the first time Franklin noticed how little Derek actually moved around the property. "Got a minute?" Franklin asked, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Derek glanced up, irritated. "Make it quick. We're short-staffed again." Franklin pulled the door shut behind him. His voice was calm but firm. "I'm not Ryan," he said. "My name is Franklin Adams. I own this resort." For a beat, Derek just stared. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Franklin didn't give him time to recover. "I've watched you intimidate staff, ignore maintenance issues, overwork and threaten employees, and treat customers like problems to be managed instead of guests to be served. You've run this place into the ground." Derek scrambled to his feet. "Wait, Mr. Adams, you don't understand. These people need structure. They're lazy if you don't stay on them." Franklin's expression didn't waver. "You're done here. Effective immediately. Security will escort you off the property within the hour. I built this place up." Derek protested, his face turning red. "You think these kids can run it without me?" Franklin stepped closer, his voice dropping. "They already are. In spite of you." Derek looked around the office as if searching for some backup that wasn't coming. When he realized Franklin meant it, he snatched his clipboard off the desk, knocked over a chair, and stormed out. Franklin didn't watch him go. He had more important things to do. By mid-morning, Franklin gathered the staff in the lobby. No corporate suits, no clipboards, no formalities. Just him standing in front of the same exhausted faces he had worked alongside all week. "I owe you all an apology," he began. "I trusted the wrong people to run this resort." There were murmurs, cautious glances exchanged. "Starting today, things are going to change. But I can't fix this without you." He paused, letting the words settle. "First, I fired Derek. Second, we're bringing in temporary workers from nearby sister properties to help cover shifts while we rebuild the team here properly. No more 70-hour weeks, no more threats, no more being treated like you're disposable." Jackson crossed his arms, skeptical. "How do we know it's not just talk?" Franklin nodded. "You don't. Which is why I'm staying here until it's fixed." A few heads lifted at that. "I'm not going back to my office until every one of you has the support you need. You'll have a say in scheduling. Maintenance requests will be addressed within 24 hours, and anyone mistreated will have a direct line to me." Wendy stepped forward, clutching a crumpled notepad. "What about time off? Some of us. We've been scared to even ask." Franklin met her gaze. "You'll submit time off requests directly through a new system. I'll personally review them until a new, qualified general manager is in place." Marta raised her hand hesitantly. "And the broken equipment?" "Already called in a maintenance team this morning," Franklin said. "New carts, new kitchen appliances, full safety audit. No one should get hurt doing their job." There was a long silence, the group absorbing the shock. It wasn't total trust yet, but something shifted. A weight lifted slightly. By early afternoon, Franklin sat down with the senior kitchen staff Luis, Tara, and a few others to hear their concerns firsthand. Luis leaned forward, voice low. "We need more than bodies. We need training. Half the people Derek hired didn't even know basic food safety." Franklin nodded. "Non-negotiable. We'll bring in certified trainers next week. Anyone who wants to learn more culinary skills, management skills, we'll pay for those classes." Tara pushed her hair out of her face. "And what about the people who've been killing themselves here for years? We get anything for sticking it out." "You'll get raises," Franklin said without hesitation. "Retroactive to the start of the month. Plus bonuses for anyone who's worked over a certain number of overtime hours during the last quarter." He wasn't offering charity. He was repairing a breach of trust. Outside, the maintenance crew had already started work. New carts rolled down the halls. Electricians replaced broken lighting. The cooler that had been leaking for weeks was disassembled and hauled off. Franklin found time to sit with Wendy during one of her rare 10-minute breathers on a shady bench outside. "You think people will stay now?" she asked, sipping water. "I think they'll stay if they're treated with respect," Franklin said. "And if they don't, we'll know we tried." She looked down at her hands for a moment. "I almost quit last week," she said quietly. Franklin leaned back, feeling the humid breeze. "I would have understood," he said. "But I'm glad you didn't." Later that evening, Franklin joined Marta in the laundry room, helping fold endless piles of towels. It was hot and loud, but he listened as she talked about her years at the resort, about the pride she used to feel before the last few years drained it away. "I used to tell my grandchildren I helped make this place beautiful," she said. "Lately, I pretend I don't work here." Franklin folded a towel carefully. "Let's fix that," he said. Word spread quickly through the resort. Staff who had been on the edge of quitting stayed to see if the change was real. Guests noticed, too. Smiles came a little easier, service picked up, and the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't perfect. The staff was still stretched thin. Temp workers arrived late and sometimes needed extra supervision. But it was no longer a sinking ship. It was a place trying to heal. As Franklin walked the property that night, he saw Jackson training a new temp how to properly clear tables, patiently explaining how to balance plates without spilling drinks. He saw Wendy laughing with a guest's child at the front desk, handing them a sticker sheet while their parents checked in. He saw Marta rolling a brand new cart down the hallway, her step lighter. Franklin knew it would take time. Real change always did. But for the first time in a long while, the Sunwave Beach Resort wasn't just surviving. It was starting to shine again. The day after Derek's firing, the atmosphere at Sunwave Beach Resort was quieter, cautious but not tense like before. Franklin knew trust wouldn't rebuild in a few shifts. It would take showing up, staying late, and following through. He started by meeting with the skeleton leadership team left behind. Lacey, the assistant manager, sat stiffly in a conference room chair, arms folded. Franklin watched her carefully. She had stood next to Derek during those ugly moments but hadn't spoken up or stopped him. "You're still here," Franklin said, pulling out a chair across from her. "I need the job," Lacey answered, voice flat. "Needing the job isn't the problem," Franklin said. "How you do the job is." She looked away, silent. "I'm giving you one chance," he continued. "You step up, you support the staff, and you lead by example. Or you're next out the door." Lacey nodded once, tight and jerky. "And you start today," Franklin said, standing. "You're on laundry duty. Marta needs an extra pair of hands." Lacey's mouth opened slightly in protest, but she caught herself and stood up. Franklin didn't have patience for anyone thinking they were above real work. He spent the rest of the morning shadowing different departments. In the laundry room, Marta showed Lacey how to properly fold sheets without wrinkling them. In the kitchen, Luis walked a new hire through food safety basics, emphasizing hand washing and safe storage, something that had been neglected before. At the pool, Franklin found Jackson balancing a clipboard, checking chemical levels. "How's it going?" Franklin asked. "Better," Jackson said, glancing up. Still short a lifeguard for the evening shift, though. Franklin nodded. I'll move the posting up the priority list. Until then, double breaks for whoever's on the stand. Appreciate it, Jackson said, adjusting the test kit. In the lobby, Wendy managed the front desk with more ease now, but the line stretched out the door. Franklin slipped behind the counter, logging into a spare terminal to help check in guests. The work was repetitive but necessary. It gave him a better pulse on where the bottlenecks were. By late afternoon, Franklin called a quick meeting in the staff lounge, careful not to drag anyone off duty for too long. We're not where we need to be yet, Franklin said, looking around at the tired but attentive faces. But every day we stay consistent, we get closer. He handed out a printed sheet listing immediate hires needed, updated shift rotations, and a new staff hotline number that rang directly to his temporary office. If you hit a wall, Franklin said, you call me. Not some middle-layer manager trying to cover their mistakes. He paused. And if anyone tries to intimidate, threaten, or mistreat you, they're gone. No warnings. Several employees exchanged glances, a few nodding almost imperceptibly. After the meeting, Franklin stayed to help set up dinner service by the oceanfront patio. The sunset crowd was already gathering, the scent of grilled shrimp and fresh fruit filling the air. Franklin wiped down tables, noticing Luis helping a new server navigate the POS system. Tara darted between tables, but this time with a spark of energy, not the frantic exhaustion he had first seen. Midway through his shift, Franklin spotted a young woman with a clipboard, standing awkwardly near the bar. She wore a black polo with the logo of a staffing agency. You the temp coordinator? Franklin asked, walking over. Yes, sir. Amanda, she said, adjusting her glasses. Got 6 more temps ready to start tonight. Bartenders, servers, housekeepers. Franklin shook her hand. Perfect. Get them through orientation fast. Pair them with experienced staff. Amanda nodded, already making notes. It was a start. Not a full fix, but enough to ease some of the crushing weight from the regular employees. Later, as the sky deepened into violet, Franklin found Wendy sitting on a bench outside, sipping from a paper cup. Long day, she said, smiling tiredly. Franklin sat beside her. The right kind of long day. She nodded, looking out at the darkened ocean. I've been thinking, Wendy said after a moment. Maybe I could train for a supervisor role. Help keep things moving without it getting like it was before. Franklin smiled. That's exactly what we need, he said. Let's set up a training track. Leadership with heart. She looked down, a little embarrassed, but pleased. As Franklin stood to leave, he caught sight of Lacey emerging from the laundry room, hair damp with sweat, arms full of clean towels. Marta walked beside her, speaking animatedly about folding techniques. Lacey wasn't smiling, but she was listening. It wasn't redemption yet, but it was movement. Over the next week, the changes deepened. New hires filled critical gaps, allowing overworked staff to breathe. Franklin kept his promise, personally reviewing time-off requests and approving reasonable ones without delay. He also brought in a mediation specialist to run workshops on communication and conflict resolution, ensuring that old habits didn't creep back in. Franklin stayed in a modest room on the property, refusing to return to his penthouse apartment downtown until the resort was stable. Every morning, he grabbed coffee with the kitchen crew at sunrise, checked maintenance logs with the janitors, and reviewed guest comments with the front desk. There were setbacks. One temp worker was caught leaving his shift early without clocking out and was immediately let go. Another permanent employee, a server who thought the new rules meant he could slack off, was pulled into a meeting with Franklin and given a clear choice: recommit or resign. He chose to resign. Franklin wasn't running a charity. He was rebuilding a team based on respect, not leniency. One afternoon, Franklin found Marta near the employee garden, tending a few struggling hibiscus plants. He crouched beside her, helping pull weeds. You ever think about running the housekeeping department? Franklin asked casually. Marta looked at him, startled. I'm not a manager, she said. You are, he said simply. You just haven't had the title. She wiped dirt from her hands, considering. I'll think about it, she said finally. Good, Franklin said. I'll be here when you decide. The garden itself became a small project. Franklin funded a simple expansion, allowing staff to grow herbs and vegetables they could use in the kitchen. It wasn't a big thing, but it anchored pride to the property in a new way. By the end of the month, guest satisfaction scores rose. Families lingered longer by the pool. Couples booked extra nights. Repeat guests left handwritten notes praising the friendly service. Staff turnover slowed. Jackson accepted a promotion to lead pool operations. Wendy entered a management training program. Marta accepted the housekeeping supervisor role, bringing her quiet strength to the team. The resort wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was alive again. One evening, as Franklin walked the beach, his shoes crunching softly against the sand, he saw the staff gathered near the bonfire pit, laughing, sharing grilled corn and sodas. No forced team building exercises. No corporate slogans. Just real people finally breathing easier. He stayed on the edge of the circle, unnoticed, content. Franklin Adams had come undercover to find the cracks in his empire. He stayed to rebuild the foundation with the people who mattered most. And this time he wasn't going anywhere.